Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to New York's Business Podcast. My name is Jacob Restituto. I run Restituto Media, a photo and video service here on Long Island. Today I'm here with Nino Caridi Law. Thank you so much, Nino, for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, man.
It's my pleasure. So for people that aren't super familiar with you and your story and what you do and you as a lawyer, can you give a little backstory on you and tell me about yourself?
Sure. So as you said, Nino, from Nino Caridi Law, right? I'm the principal attorney at the firm. The firm is based out of Garden City, New York. We focus primarily on business, real estate, and everyday legal matters for individuals and business owners. Primarily, our business clientele is in the hospitality industry, restaurants, bars, but we also represent real estate investors, service companies, service businesses, and mom and pop businesses.
So what does the day-to-day look like? You're representing, for example, like you said, the hospitality business, right? As well as many others, but
Yeah.
the hospitality, what are you doing for them as a lawyer?
I like it when they come to me before they even open the business, right? Because then you get involved from the planning stage, right? Because a lot of times I find that people who are opening a restaurant or a bar have been in the industry, right? They either maybe a server or a bartender or a manager, and they think now is the right time for them to take it to the next level. But they don't know a lot about the behind the scenes part, right? The business side of things. And being that I've represented a lot of people in the industry, I've kind of seen a lot, so I can guide them from the early stages on, right? So in the beginning, they have things they have to consider, right? Are they going to form a corporation? Are they going to form an LLC? Do they have partners? Do they have investors, right? How do we handle all of that? Do they have a space? Is it going to be a lease? Are they going to buy a building or something, is it something else? And then it goes on, right? As things go on, do they need a liquor license? Okay, then we can do that for them. But it can be as simple as, hey, we have an existing restaurant concept and we want to open a new space. Can you review this lease for us? Or it could be something more complex, getting involved from the ground up and working with them as they grow the business.
Continuing on the liquor license idea, so hypothetically, you'd be the one that would apply to New York State for them on their behalf?
Yes. So if you open a bar or restaurant and you want to serve alcohol, you need to be licensed by the New York State Liquor Authority. And everyone that is an owner in the business has to be on the liquor license. So we'll kind of get together with everybody, we'll fill out all the paperwork, we'll make sure that everything that they need is in place with respect to the premises, if they need to notify the local community, if they need to go before the community to see if there's any specific rules or regulations that the community wants them to abide by in connection with the liquor license. But yeah, they're going to come to me and we're going to kind of talk it through and see what they need to do and then go from there.
Often, do you find that your clientele or your work is more, I guess, structural as opposed to responding to legal matters, or do you do a lot of like, oh, this company's now getting sued and they need a lawyer?
I guess the goal is to avoid the problems, right? So you could try to be as proactive as possible, but unfortunately, I think the reality is most people don't want to deal with a lawyer until they have to, right? So I try to educate the clients and say, hey, it's important for you to get me involved early so we can avoid these things.
I think part of that's based on the fact that I think lawyers can be a little intimidating, or the idea of a lawyer can be intimidating because, like, you try to read a law document and I'm like, this looks like it's still written in Latin.
Yeah.
So the idea of like, okay, I need a lawyer is like, can be a thing to a lot of business owners or just people in general. Like, that's a little scary.
Yeah.
Now you're, a cool looking guy. You're significantly less intimidating than the average lawyer. But but like that being said, like, I think just the idea intimidates people. So like, I don't even know where I'd find a lawyer.
Yeah.
So that, other than asking buddies, right?
Yeah, so like what I wanted to do when I opened my office, I started my career at a big firm working with institutional clients, very different than working with private clients and individuals. But what I wanted to do was kind of do things a little differently than the old school, like you're talking about. The lawyers that are unapproachable, unavailable, stuck in their ways, right? Old school types. And I wanted to be more accessible, more relatable, and more current with technology and trends so that I can be the guy that someone in my peer group is comfortable with, but everybody can be comfortable with, right? Because that is the next generation of business owners are the people that are my age or closer in my age than maybe the older generation. And oftentimes young business owners that don't know a lawyer, they use a lawyer that their dad recommends, or their uncle, or their grandfather, or whatever, right? So at some point, my firm got nicknamed Not Your Father's Law Firm, and it was just kind of like, not the one your dad recommends,
Sure.
somebody that you can relate to and feel comfortable working with,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So that's kind of what I try to do every day, is live that, right? And be available, be approachable, while still kind of commanding the respect that a lawyer needs to in certain situations, not necessarily with the clients, but with an agency or with an adversary or somebody else that we need to deal with in order to accomplish the goal for the client, right?
So you mentioned working in a large firm and then starting your own firm. What does that process look like of, okay, I decide I'm leaving this large firm and I would like to start my own. Where does that first client come from?
So for me, before I went to law school, while I was in college and in law school, I was a DJ, right? I DJ'd in bars and nightclubs on Long Island in the city. So I had friends in the hospitality industry already. And when I was working at the big firm, I would often get phone calls, hey Nino, can you help us out with this? And the firm I was at, maybe it wasn't the right fit for that type of work, or I just was very busy and I couldn't do it on the side. So when I looked to open my own firm, I kind of put the feelers out and said, hey, just so you know, I'm going to be out there on my own now. If you need something, I'll be available. And inevitably the phone rang, right? So it's the luck of just sometimes it's right place, right time, but a lot of times it's the foundation of the relationships that you built before, right? In any business. So that's kind of, but for me, maybe my first hospitality client was, just came about, right? We were at dinner, the manager comes over, introduces himself. I introduce myself with the people we're there with, and they say, oh, you're a lawyer. We have this issue, you know, and it's just what it is. Oh, can you help me out with this? All right, here's my card. And the guy emailed me, and then we had a meeting, and then it was a trademark issue. There was another restaurant that was using their logo and name, and we got the other restaurant to back off and change the name and stuff. But it was just kind of how it happened, right? But it's right place, right time. Sure. In addition to the foundation of the relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So now that you've developed the client base, let's talk about marketing.
Yeah.
How do you market as a law firm, or do you just go solely by word of mouth?
I think a lot of it is word of mouth, right? In the hospitality industry, but also other businesses. A lot of times, business owners are friends with business owners, right? Guys who own a bar or restaurant, their friends own bars and restaurants, right? So it's oftentimes, hey, somebody says to one of my clients, oh, I'm having this issue. And they'll say, call Nino, or call my guy Nino, right? He'll help you out. And it's a lot of word of mouth. I try to do all right with the social media and the marketing. I wish I did more of it, right? I think it's like you get bogged down in the work and it's hard to stay on top of it.
It's the biggest dilemma of any business owner.
That's it, right? You kind of wear multiple hats, and you got to evaluate, you know, is the spend on the marketing worth it, or the return, you know, the return that you're going to get. And in that industry, maybe not, right? Like the word of mouth referrals are important, but you have to have, like, on the back end, when somebody looks you up, you have to have the social media presence, the right website, some good reviews, and maybe even some case studies up there to show, hey, I've done this in the past, I can do it for you.
I'm curious what kind of content you were posting on your social media, like as a guy that does social media, I'm curious, like, just how you were running it.
I've done where, you know, kind of my backstory. I've done that where I've talked about, hey, I have these entrepreneurial roots. I come from an entrepreneurial family. I know business. I've worked with business owners. I am a business owner with the law firm. And to try to be more relatable to the small business owner. And I'll post every time we have a great result or even an okay result. We'll post it. I'll post it on LinkedIn. I'll post it on social media, depending on the type of matter I'm handling. You know, on LinkedIn, I'll post a lot of the successes we have in court or a new transaction that we did, because ultimately on LinkedIn, maybe you have accountants and financial advisors and such that are working with these types of business owners, so that they know in the back of their mind when their client says, hey, I need to do this. Oh, I just saw Nino post something about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough. You know the deal. You're in the business, right?
I think something would be really interesting, just a sidebar, I think it'd be really interesting to see some sort of like, almost creating your own case studies.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're a business owner and you're experiencing this is what, as a lawyer, not as your lawyer, because I can't necessarily, but as a lawyer, this is hypothetically what I would do, and, catching the eye, because of like when, just creating essentially shareable content for the business owners or the restaurants or the whatever the case, with the hospitality or anything, right?
Yeah.
And kind of these case by case, like, hey, if you've ever experienced this, if you're having trouble with, the New York State's liquor authority, here's a couple of things that I found to help. You know, and it's like not necessarily that you're promoting yourself, but you're kind of showing your expertise, and then they're like, oh wow, like this guy actually knows what he's talking about. I don't need that issue anymore. That's not an issue I have, but I have this issue with the Board of Health. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it builds the credibility.
Exactly.
And shows you kind of know what you're talking about.
Without it being like, hey, look at me, I'm amazing at what I do.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. I've thought about that, and it's a matter of, in every industry, there's probably those top 5 like frequently asked questions, right?
Exactly.
And you just kind of come up with those things, or did you receive this notice, right? If you receive something like this, don't panic. This is what you should do. Something like that. I get it. And again, it's probably what I should be doing, right? So maybe we'll be working together on stuff like that in the future.
But I hear you, man. Dude, I run it for clients, and my social media is not always the part, because I'm obviously running it for them. It's like, because I hear you, because I'm running all these, my hats, a lot of different rings, and then I gotta pull it out to put it on. And
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, man. So, you leaving the law firm, what made you decide that you want to start your own?
When I got into law school, again, when I was thinking about getting into law school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a business owner. I thought maybe if I had a law degree, it would be beneficial to know the law and run the business. I got into law school. It was a weird time for jobs. It was like 2008, I started law school. What was going on in the world, in the financial world at that time. And by the time I graduated in 2011, the job market still didn't kind of rebound as well as anybody would have wanted it to. I got a job at a big firm. Didn't love it, but I knew like, oh, maybe I could do this, right? I like working with people, solving problems. So then at some point, I made a plan. I said, all right, this is the day I'm gonna leave. It took me a while to get to that point, but this is the day I'm gonna leave, and I'm gonna do my own thing, right? It was like this 8-9 month plan.
Oh, cool.
And it took speaking with other business owners, both on the business side and law firm owners, to kind of push me to the edge of, hey, you gotta do it. I was working with one client at the firm, and he was a young guy, very, very ambitious guy, and he gave me his story, and it was something like, hey, I didn't really have much of anything, but I was hungry. I went to a guy with an established business, and I said, give me an opportunity. Let me call myself a partner. Let me go out and build us up a business. And he became a very successful guy, and ultimately was running this big, big construction firm throughout the city. And he said, he's like, he was probably a well-read guy, was telling me about different books he had read. And he said, one of the books I read, you got to do this. You got to put yourself up against the wall, and either you're going to succeed or you're going to fail, right? And he's like, you got to just do it, right? So that was one guy. And there was another attorney that I had met through LinkedIn. I think I saw something he posted. I said, hey, I'd love to pick your brain. I want to do this. You're doing it. How'd you do it? And his situation was a little different. He just did it right out of law school. But he said, you're going to talk about it, you're going to talk about it until you just do it.
Sure.
Right? So I had this chalkboard in my kitchen, in my apartment in Mineola at the time. And I picked a date, and I wrote it down. And I saw it every day, and like that was the day. And then it came time around that. This time, it was like holiday time.
How long ago?
Almost 9 years ago now, right? So holiday time, I'm like, I gotta give notice. I gotta get this thing going. But all the while, I was doing all the groundwork. I was running around getting headshots taken on the weekend for my website. I had a web guy that worked with all my restaurant clients. I working on the website. I set up an office space in a client's office, like a shared space. I had all the things ready to press play. And I did it.
It's probably the smart way to do it. I think a lot of business owners, including myself, like I'm gonna start my own business, and you just go out and do it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I have no clients, I don't have the headshots
Yeah.
ready. You know, granted, now at this point you have time where you can do all those things, but
Yeah.
it definitely makes more of a stressful experience than need to be. Where I
Yeah.
admire that it's like, hey, let's. I plan on leaving on this day or initiating the process on this day. I'm gonna get a couple ducks on the road beforehand.
Yeah, it's good to have a little runway.
Yeah.
But it didn't mean that I had work right away. I had a couple things kicking around, but it gives you the foundation at least, right? And then like you can start marketing right away, and you're putting, here's my website, this is what we're doing. And in the beginning, I had a lot of great ideas with the marketing, and then you get busy, luckily, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
And then you just don't pick it up.
So, a lot of people that I talk to on this podcast, typically they're in the service industry, and the service industry struggles with a lot of seasonal. They're seasonal. They have very, very busy seasons and very slow seasons. I'm curious, in your industry, do you experience the same thing?
Different types of work I do might be cyclical in a way, right? Some of my practice involves real estate transactions, and there's times people are buying houses, selling houses. The hospitality clients, it depends, right? There's no real cycle. There might be a business cycle in that you have
Depending on how the market's going.
depending on the market, people are either selling off places or buying new places.
But I guess there's always work for you in that end.
Yeah, and it's like it's weird. Like you said earlier, right? Like when you're the lawyer, people don't want to call you unless something's going on. So it's one of those. I explain it to clients, friends, and even young attorneys who want to open their own law practice. You know, when you're not dealing with institutional clients who just send you work all the time, and you're dealing with the small business owner, you know, you could do one piece of work for them in a year. You could be very busy with them for a year. You might not hear from them for 6 months until something happens, right? But you want to create this relationship where you can be the phone call that they can make. They're not afraid to call you because they're going to get a bill, and they tell you, hey, we're thinking about this, we're thinking about that. So at least you can get in and get involved earlier on in the process, so that when something comes up, you're already prepared, or you can avoid it altogether.
So it's an interesting thing you mentioned is that hourly rate bill, right? Like, you know, I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, if I call my lawyer, I'm going to get a very hefty bill. How do you personally, you know, how do you structure that? Is it, if anybody calls, it's an hourly rate, or it's like a working relationship based on transactions?
It's one of those, as the owner of a law practice, you have to manage and figure out what works best, right? And sometimes it's the type of client, sometimes it's the type of work. I think everybody likes to know what they're going to spend. But on our end, we don't always know how much time something's going to take, right? There are a lot of factors that go into it. You know, the factors include the complexity of the transaction or the dispute.
The complexity of the client.
The client, or the complexity of the person on the other side,
Or the
right?
personality of the client.
Right. So like you know, you could have an attorney you have dealt with before in the past, and on the other side, and you know it might be a little smoother because you work well together, and there might be somebody who makes your life a little more difficult, right? But going back to how we try to structure the billing is, traditionally it's an hourly type of situation. But as you work more with somebody, you can come up with more fixed fee arrangements. And I've actually incorporated now some monthly retainer type of programs for certain clients where, hey, it's a flat fee every month. That includes X amount of time that you can call me and I'll be available for you. And then going forward, if something comes up, there'll be an hourly rate or a fixed fee depending on the project.
Absolutely.
But I always tell everybody, I mean, my meter's not running if you just call me to talk, right? If it's a substantive strategy session, and we're actually working on something in the middle of something, that might be billable time, but that might be included in the flat rate that we're charging, or it might be hourly. But most times, call me, we'll figure it out, and then we go from there. Yeah, but it's hard.
Yeah, I hear you. I want to hear more about the firm and idea of people on the other lawyers under the firm, or how does that work?
So traditionally it's been me and a paralegal, and I've aligned myself with they call it of counsel, other attorneys that can help me in other areas of law, right? So if we have something that's kind of beyond my scope, I can bring somebody in to help with the project. And that's kind of, as the business owner, not dealing with institutional clients, it's hard to scale a law firm.
When you say institutional clients, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, when I was working at my old firm, we did a lot of work for insurance companies, right? So the insurance company has an issue, you're the attorney for the insurance company or you're the law from the insurance company, it's a constant flow of work that comes in,
Sure.
right? But when you're dealing with private clients, it's only if there's something going on, right? So that's why. So like I mentioned earlier, unless you have a really, really, really big roster of private clients that are keeping you very, very busy, it's hard to scale a law firm from scratch.
Sure.
Right? The big firms are the big firms, and they're the big firms for the reason. They've got this history, they've got a deep bench of lawyers that have been doing this for a very long time, and I, kind of left that to do my own thing, and I've chosen to do it my way, which is be the guy for my clients. I don't want to pawn them off on anybody, but I want to utilize support staff when I can to make it more efficient. And then as of late, I've even tried to incorporate more and more technology to make it more efficient.
That was my exact next question of systems. So I like to talk about systems in business. I think there are certain systems that really can hurt or help a business. It can really slow you down or really speed you up. For example, just the way you run your business, but even getting into the nitty-gritty of apps or like POS systems or anything like that. So I'm curious about how you're using technology. What does that mean for you?
As a law firm, you need a practice management software to basically run your back end, and that's going to basically allow you to bill, open new files, keep track of documents, keep track of your calendar, all of that in one place. So the practice management software I use allows you to do document automation, it allows you to create custom forms and things like that. So those are the things that I'm trying to use on the transactional side to speed things up, right? If we're going to do a new transaction, we have custom forms that we can fill out with all the information on the transaction, and automatically the documents will be populated. So it saves us time and allows me to kind of utilize staff for that as opposed to my time, and then I can keep the cost more effective for the client.
Do you like the one you use?
I do. I like the one I use. It's called Clio. And over the years, I started with like the Clio Basic, and then I went to the Clio Intermediate, and now I just upgraded again to Clio Advanced. And the Advanced, one of the biggest features I liked about it was that it gives you the ability to create stages for all your different matters, right? So depending on the type of matter you have, you can create custom stages so that as the matter progresses, you can see on a dashboard where it's at. So if it's in the very beginning stage, through the middle and through the end, depending on what's going on with the matter, you can kind of open it up and say, okay, we have these 10 transactions, let's look at them and where each one is at. Do we need to do something on it? It just keeps, big picture, it gives you the ability to look at it.
Going back to that thread that we've talked about a bit, people are concerned to call a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
What would you first of all say to those people? Second of all, what would you say are reasons that people don't? What would you say people? Let me rephrase that. What would you say are reasons people should call a lawyer but don't realize that they actually think they need a lawyer for?
I think that people, like you said, are afraid to call a lawyer because of the cost, right? And not everything is always going to be very expensive. It all depends on who you're speaking to and what you really need done. But it's going to ultimately be more expensive if you don't consult with the lawyer now and something comes up later, right?
That's a great point.
Yeah, so, and the biggest example, or the best example I can give that I see most frequently is that a business owner signs a lease for a space, whether it's a retail space or a restaurant space or office space. And in the beginning, they're very cost conscious and they don't want to spend the money to have a lawyer review it. So they kind of read it, but they don't really know what they're looking for. They sign it, and then something comes up in their business. They either want to move out of the space, they want to sell the business, they need to close the business, something like that. And then they look to the lease, they call the landlord, and then it becomes a problem because the landlord says, well, the lease says you can't do that, or the lease says you need to do this first, or you didn't give me the right notice, or anything like that, right? And then it creates a problem.
And that problem costs significantly more than just giving a lawyer the upfront cost.
Of course, right?
Because
I think people look at leases specifically very differently than purchasing an asset, but the lease interest that you're taking on is an asset, and maybe you're only paying a couple $1,000s a month, but you're paying a couple $1,000s a month over 5 years, 10 years. That adds up to be a lot of money. So this cost of a couple $1,000s up front with the lawyer to save you on the back end is important because you could be really exposed, not only as the business, but also personally on some of those leases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you work with a bunch of different types of clients, different industries. Is there anyone that you're looking to lean into more and focus on more?
So traditionally, I want it to be the law firm for everybody. That's why I say we do business, real estate, and everyday legal needs, because I want the everyday person to call me and say, hey, I have this legal issue, can you help me? So what I've done is I've created a division of my firm, and we're going to call it Everyday Legal by Nino Caridi Law. And I'm going to utilize the technology that we've talked about to be able to keep that kind of a low-cost, efficient way to deliver the everyday legal services to the everyday individual. And I want to do that because I want to focus more on the business side of things. I want to be the outside general counsel to Long Island's business owners and Long Island's hospitality community. If I had my way, if you Google Long Island restaurant lawyer, I'm up there, right? And obviously I got to do some Google AdWords or whatever you want me to do for that. But in general, I think the reputation is, hey, if you're in the restaurant and hospitality space and you need a lawyer, Nino's the guy.
Absolutely, Long Island's restaurant lawyer.
That's it, man. That's the plan.
So what's your plan for that? How do you go about that?
I got to do good work for my existing restaurant clients, right?
It comes with that said, because you come with great recommendations, so you're already doing that.
There you go. So do good work for the existing clients, continue to grow that client base, and get more involved in the community. I'm involved right now with a group called the Long Island Food Council, which started out as a food and beverage business association for Long Island's food and beverage community and service companies that work with that community, and it's kind of expanded more to include restaurants. There's a couple other industry associations that I'm trying to get more involved in, and then, like you mentioned earlier, just kind of being the thought leader on the topics that affect Long Island's restaurant owners, right?
Yeah. I think the two interesting ideas I think would be interesting to see how they'd pan out. One is super simple. I'd be curious just if you reached out to the clients you have now. You said, hey, like your hospitality restaurants, be like, hey, I'm really looking to lean into this restaurant. Like, just tell them, I'm really looking to lean into I want to be a Long Island's restaurant guy. If you have any friends or colleagues in the area, or that are interested, that need any legal service, I'd love you to recommend my name, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that we all have a million things as business owners going on, and I think that just that friendly reminder of like, oh yeah, cool,
it's the simplest thing.
It's the simplest thing.
You don't get what you don't ask for, right? And that's it. And it is. You got to be your own advocate. You got to be your own salesperson.
It's one of those things, man. Like, I guarantee you say that, and 2 days later, your buddy's gonna be at a bar, and conversation's just gonna happen. It's almost like you put it out there, and that conversation now happens. Who knows if it would have happened otherwise, or if you would have thought of your name.
I like that plan. I like it.
And then secondly, I think that the social media, I think you just lean into what you want to go into.
Yeah.
Right now, rather than covering everything, start to really focus on. I come from a background of YouTube, so my background is I'm a musician by trade. I had a whole music career, and YouTube became my full-time job, making YouTube videos for my music career. And it's interesting, like, you kind of create your niche by what you post on, and people think that you get stuck in that niche. But it's really as simple as like, okay, just start making content for what you want to move into. For example, like, I want to shift out of this and into this, and it's like, okay, well, people are like, oh, how do I do it? You just start, and you start posting, and then the algorithm and social media, the way it works is like, people will find that, people get what they want to see, and business owners will end up getting that content, and it'll be a small snowball, and then they'll start to grow and grow.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why I want to separate the two, right? I still want to be that resource to the everyday person and create this system that can service them, that doesn't necessarily need me, but ultimately I enjoy working with the business owners a little more. I think the business owner-attorney relationship can be a really great one. It's fulfilling on both ends. I love the fact that when I work with a business owner and I get involved in the beginning, say it's a restaurant, I'm working with them from the beginning stages. I review the lease, I file the liquor license, I'm working with them on raising money, and then fast forward 6 months, 9 months, I get to go and sit and have dinner there. It's a cool thing, right? When I represent somebody that's buying a house, they don't always invite me over for dinner, right? Exactly. They don't invite me over for dinner. I would be happy to come, but you still want them to feel like they can call you for other things, right? And I take pride in the fact that I surround myself with a lot of other great lawyers in different industry areas or practice areas rather, where I can refer them to them. So if they call me and say, hey, Nino, I have this issue. Oh, you should call my guy so-and-so. He can help you.
Absolutely.
And life is about building relationships, I think, and you have to cultivate them, and you have to be, you get what you give, right, in life, and you do good by people, good will come back, and that's how I like to think of it.
Yeah, man. This podcast is relatively new. There's only been a handful of episodes, but I haven't had a podcast on YouTube where it was all music-related interviews, and it's interesting where of the 120 interviews that I did for that, 85% of them were like, it's all about relationships. Everything, everywhere I've gotten, everywhere I'm going, it's all about relationships and maintaining them and doing good by them. And, in fact, actually, an interesting one that was a good perspective, I think, and a good reminder, because I think sometimes you do these things when you start off in business, and then as you get busier, you kind of like get complacent, I guess.
Yeah.
Where like this guy was saying, he's the bassist in a pretty large touring band, and I was asking how he got the gig, and he was talking about how how did he phrase it? It was like you got to be a part of the hang. And I was like, oh, can you elaborate on it? He's like, well, like he's like, that was advice that a friend had given me in the sense of like, you got to be a part of the community. You got to go out to these. He was a musician. Got to go out to other people's gigs and go to the bars and to meet people. And out of meeting people is this guy knows you're a bassist now, and then when he needs a bassist, he calls you, and then
that's it. That's
4 years later, you're now playing Madison Square Garden with this guy, and it's
how things evolve, and it's crazy how something so small, a small introduction at one point in life can lead to something like that.
And it's funny because we often, there's a Bible verse that says, "Don't despise the small beginnings," and we think that like we get too big for that. It's not worth my time going to the bar for an hour or with the restaurant for an hour, meeting with that guy for coffee. I have this work that's paying me right now. Who knows if that work's going to make you more money in the future, or better relationships in the future, or even more fulfilling work in the future.
Exactly. I think some of the most successful people that I've met are connectors. That's all they do. Selfless connectors. They don't want anything out of it. They say, oh, Jacob says he needs something. Oh, I have a guy for that. Let me call him. I'll make an introduction. And that's part of it. And you can continue to develop and expand your relationship and your friend book and your people that way. And then it comes back.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this conversation. It's really interesting hearing your side of the story and hearing your business. So, it was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Definitely, if you are in any industry, particularly in the restaurant hospitality industry, definitely give Nino a call. And thanks for watching and listening to this podcast. Hope to see you in the next one. If you're a business owner and would like to come on, shoot me a message, give me a call, and we'd love to have you. So, thanks a lot.
Thanks, man.